Inside the 20 and the 10, and look at that! He moves his way into the...
Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 18 of Shanalytics with my guy, Bay Area Baller. He's the most recurring guest on my channel. He's the highest recurring guest on all of Shanalytics. So you've come on the most times out of anyone. So hey, what do you got to say for yourself, Eric? I really do want to say thank you, though. Seriously, man. We were supposed to do a George Kittle film breakdown today, and the NFL took down NFL Game Pass, which pretty crazy. Maybe they knew we were about to step on their toes. They knew these two guys were going to expose the league. But first, no, jokes aside, Bay, how are you doing, man? What have you been up to? And what should people look forward to from you? Because I got all your stuff linked below. I got your YouTube channel. Make sure everyone goes and checks that out. What do you got coming, Bay?
Hey, thank you for those kind words. Anytime Ben reaches out, I got to jump at the opportunity. And like you said, NFL Game Pass, the NFL's messing with us, but you're the consummate professional. We got the quick pivot. We got a number of topics we're going to hit on. As far as my channel, Ben, I look forward to these games, whether it's preseason, NFL, when the regular season starts, because I love watching the film. I'm a film nut. So I'm going to put out a lot of film breakdowns and whatnot. That's something you can look forward to. And it's coming up here soon, Ben. Training camp starts on the 27th. Yeah, so it's right around the corner, and I'm excited.
Yeah, everything is creeping up on us, man. It felt like nothing was going on, and then Fred Warner signs his extension today. There's a lot going on for the 49ers, and shout out to Amin the Dream. What's up, Amin the Dream? Hey, you're a legend yourself, man. Everyone make sure you go check them out if you haven't already. Shout out to Korean 49er. I love the interactions with him. We've been messaging on Discord all day. Shout out to Korean 49er, but we got to talk about the news of the day, Bay Area Baller. We got to talk about Fred Warner. What were some of your initial thoughts when you heard about the Fred Warner extension?
I mean, just excitement. Let me tell you, Ben, I just bought a new jersey with the patch coming out. I got the white one. I know the red is the new release, but I like how those crispy white ones look. And I picked up Fred Warner because I knew this was coming. It's a little risky when you're buying a guy's jersey going into the last year of his contract, but I was confident we were going to get this done. So it was an overall excitement. And why was I so excited, Ben? Because this guy's a phenomenal player. The way he's a do-it-all linebacker. I like to say something I've been saying the last couple of weeks is he's a DB and a linebacker in the same body. Just with his coverage skills in zone, man. And I mean, he's just a great player, and I'm so glad that we locked him up.
Yeah. No, Fred Warner, he's a really great player. If you look at what the future of linebacker looks like in the NFL, that looks like Fred Warner to me, and I'm glad the 49ers locked him up now because I'm sure you saw, Eric, it seems like Darius Leonard is going to get signed any day now. I mean, seriously, it seems like he's going to get that next highest paid contract right after Fred just got his. So it's great for the 49ers to be able to lock up Fred Warner now. And the thing I really liked about this for me was we saw what happened with DeForest Buckner. We understood the bad blood that kind of went down between the organization and the players there. And I think for the fans, it's kind of a sigh of relief to see Fred Warner just get extended, right? I think fans get really scared when there's not a lot of news about 49ers players because, man, what's going to happen? The last time that happened, DeForest Buckner got traded, right? So I think 49ers fans are relieved right now. They should be. He's not just one of the best players on the 49ers. He's one of the 10 best defensive players in the entire NFL, in my opinion. So I think, to me, makes a lot of sense from the team standpoint, from the player standpoint, And the part I like, especially Bay, is that we're keeping on the emotional leader of the 49ers on defense. Not just, like I just said emotional leader, but he's also the smarts and the brains behind the 49ers defense on the field. He is one of the most brilliant players in the NFL. And with the 49ers specifically making the switch from Robert Saleh to D'Amico Ryans, I think to me, it's great to have that consistency in place with your play caller on defense.
Absolutely. The continuity, these guys are used to hearing Fred's voice when he's calling the plays. This has been a phenomenal defense, right? Even though last year we got hit with some injuries, right? Fred was there. And that's the thing about it, Ben. Knock on wood, because football players get injured, but Fred's been so consistently healthy and on the field. Those are guys that you definitely want to keep around, especially with the injury problems we had. So Fred, he doesn't have that issue. So I'm glad that we retain him.
Yeah, and to me, yeah, I mean that's the other thing is you're able to not just retain a player you drafted that you have kept along the way the entire time, but he's a guy who never has gotten injured in his entire career, and finger crossed that he never does. But when the 49ers recently have been making big time investments in players, you look at guys like, there was Trent Williams this offseason, but you go back, you look at George Kittle, you look at D Ford recently, you look at Jimmy Garoppolo, all guys with injury concerns, really, and not just, ticky-tack injuries here and there, legitimate injury, like career concerns. So to me, I love being able to go out and get one of the best players at his position. And guess what? He's right in your building already, so you know exactly what you're getting from him. It's not like the Quan Alexander signing where you don't know exactly what you're getting a guy. You don't know about his work ethic quite. You don't know how he's going to fit into the culture of the organization. No, we already know all that about Fred Warner. So the 49ers, to me, it's a move that had to happen. It was a move we were all expecting to happen. But I'm glad the 49ers didn't drag this out and make something of it that they didn't have to, right? We saw how the George Kittle contract kind of led into the season a little bit. Now he was signed before the season, but looking at that, how that went down, it seemed much more contentious than the Fred Warner situation. So, Bay, why do you think that this was such an easy sort of deal to make for the 49ers? Because to me, it didn't seem like they had a lot of struggle in getting to this contract with Fred Warner.
Well, I mean, on Fred's part, he's the highest paid linebacker in football. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is that off ball?
Yes, that is true. The one thing is that there are some defensive ends who are counted as outside linebackers, right? So people will say they're paid higher, but realistically, off-ball linebackers, inside linebackers, he's the highest paid by far, or not by far. Next is Bobby Wagner at $18 million. The one deal that I see that when you're looking at all of the highest paid linebackers that kind of stands out is CJ Mosley, actually, at $17 million average annually per year. He's more guaranteed money than either Bobby Wagner or Fred Warner. So that was interesting when I was going up and down the list of highest paid linebackers in the NFL. So yeah, I mean, you're right. Fred, we made him the highest paid linebacker, but also just within that, it is a somewhat team-friendly deal. I put the link in the comments for everyone. They can go check out that link I posted about an hour before our show. But the breakdown with Fred Warner's contract to me, and I'm just going to pull it up right here so make sure I'm not wrong. It's $8 million that first year of the deal, right? And then it kicks up to $18 million in terms of the cap number, then $24 million, and then 23 and 20. So to me, the way they've structured out the deal is in a way that they can figure things out down the line, right? They didn't push all the money towards the end of the deal, which when most people hear a team-friendly NFL deal, right, they think, oh, the deal is going to be backloaded. All the money is going to be pushed towards the end of the contract. But the situation the 49ers are in, and like I've tried to explain to people, they have Trey Lance, one of the greatest commodities in the NFL. So that changes your timeline a little bit. And if you look, for the most part, the 49ers have the majority of the expensive years for Fred Warner on those cheap years with Trey Lance. So to me, it makes a lot of sense in terms of where the future of the team is going and in terms of team building. You want to push all that money to those cheap years for Trey Lance, so you'll be able to take full advantage of him.
Absolutely. I mean, you nailed it right there. That was excellent analysis. The one thing that does come to my mind is I feel like we've backloaded a lot of contracts,
That is
right?
true.
Trent Williams going to get progressively more expensive, Kittle, Armstead, and that kind of leads us into that next topic. Not that I want to change it for you, right? But right into the 49ers cap as a whole, right?
Yeah.
I know you wanted to hit on
Yeah,
that.
no, we can absolutely cover that. And real quick, though, I do want to cover a comment that Korean 49er pointed out. And I'm interested in this too, because I didn't think about it quite this way until it was pointed out to me by Korean 49er that, hey, are either of you concerned that the 49ers have the top paid players at 4 positions right now? That, yeah, I'm getting worried about that right now. But the thing I will say, just within that, is to me, the problem that on the 49ers cap table isn't necessarily that, oh, they have the top paid player at all these positions. To me, the problem is Eric Armstead, that they're paying him so much money. They're paying him nearly DeForest Buckner type money. So I don't think they can be able to hang on all their blue chip players if Eric Armstead is still on this deal he's on. And then guess what, Bay? 49ers can't even really get out of that deal with Eric Armstead. If you look, they have a out right in 2023, but his cap number that season, if they don't take the out, is $21 million, nearly what DeForest Buckner is making. But if they take the out, right, they get the contract out, it's still $11.5 million. So it's not like the 49ers are saving heaps and bounds of money. Yes, it's a pay decrease, but it's still a lot of dead money that the 49ers have to take care of. So to me, there's no way out with the Eric Armstead deal. That's what I really worry about with the future of the 49ers. Not that they have all these players that were the highest paid at their position. Because honestly, if you have a team with healthy players, with healthy stars, you probably want to be paying them as the best in the league. My problem is when you're paying one of those types of players like they are one of the best at their position, and they just aren't close to that. And that's what it is with Eric Armstead. So
no, yeah, you hit on all the facts. the Eric Armstead contract is probably the one. I mean, D Ford as well, but
even within that, that's only 2 years, this year, next year left on the deal.
Yeah.
If we're talking about the Super Bowl window, the Trey Lance Super Bowl window, right, which to me is years 2022 through 2024, because I'm just going to say this now. I don't think they're going to win his rookie year, not this season. It would be very hard to ask of a rookie, but I don't think it's unrealistic to say that they could win a lot of games and go far in years 2 to 4 with Trey Lance, right?
Absolutely. Definitely. I mean, Trey Lance, he's going to be such a dynamic weapon, and I'm so excited to see him on the field, right? Because it's been a while. I've watched a lot of that North Dakota State tape, so I want to see him in a Niners uniform. I don't really like that green and gold pattern. It's not appealing to my eyes.
It doesn't do it for you quite, right?
No, but I mean, the plays he's making are making me say, wow, right? Yeah. Now, when we're still talking cap, E. Kim brought up a comment. Nick Bosa, right? He's going to be into his 3rd year. First round picks do have the 5th year option, but he's going to be paid. I mean, pass rushers are making, if they make 20, 25 million easily.
Yeah, his brother is making like 27, 28 million per year average annual basis. So things get really scary really quick. I think, to me, the hope is that, let's transition to this, and I'll just talk through it a little more. To me, if we're talking about future cap implications, let's start with Nick Bosa, because that's just where we were. They can figure out how to work around Nick Bosa in the future, to me, if they can find some way to alleviate that Eric Armstead contract. But let's say they can't figure out the Eric Armstead contract. Let's say that's a loss, right? They just have to take that loss. The method I've been pitching to everybody for a while this offseason, and to me seems even more prevalent now that we know how much we're paying Fred Warner, is that the 49ers should save as much money as they can this season and roll it over to next season's cap. Bay, to me, I'm not saying the 49ers should punt on the season, but if Trey is starting and they want him starting week 1 and they're cutting Jimmy Garoppolo, why wouldn't they wait until next season to go and splash that cash in the offseason? If you want to talk about building, a true contender, like a better team than the 2019 roster that the 49ers had, I think they could do that with 30 extra million in cap space if they had it next offseason. And then all the time, Bay, I've heard people like Grant Cohn bring up and people, like I don't live in California full time, so I don't fully realize it, but there is that 13.5% tax rate. It does count more towards the players. So by having all that extra money, then you're talking about narrowing the gap between the 49ers and other teams in free agency because they can go out and spend all that money in the future. So if I'm the 49ers, I would try and figure out some way to save money now so that they can spend more later rather than just wasting that money on a 1-year kind of free agent pass rusher type or a 1-year corner type where I don't feel like that's going to push them over the edge necessarily.
Yeah, and you talked about the state tax, and honestly, I want to make a point. I don't think that's even fair. There should be a way that we can balance it out with the state taxes like that. It doesn't seem right that, in tax-free states that these players, I mean, they have incentive to go to these other states, and
Florida,
California, we got
Texas, Tennessee, all states with no income tax, right? So it's going to make a huge difference if let's just say hypothetically you're considered the greatest quarterback of all time, right? Let's say hypothetically you're leaving the New England Patriots and you say to the 49ers, hey, I want to go play for your team. I need an extra $10 million, though, to make it work. Let's make it work. And then the Tampa Bay Buccaneers or, any random team just offers him a slight discount. But guess what? He's bringing in more income because he's in a tax-free state. Why wouldn't, let's say, I don't know, let's call him Tim Brady. Why wouldn't he go and sign with that other team, right? I mean, what are we talking about here? And Ekem brought this up too. I mentioned Tennessee, Texas, Nevada, Washington. Both have no state income tax. So it's a huge disadvantage for the 49ers that they're going to have to figure out some way to change the stakes at some point. I think there's a way they can do it, like I said, with rolling over the cap. But like you brought up, maybe this is something that the NFL should consider themselves to try and make it less of a competitive advantage.
That's how I feel. I agree with that. I mean, there should be a way to somehow have these things balance out because, that's a pretty unfair advantage if you ask me, but I'm biased. I can't even lie, right?
No, you can't. And the one thing I'll say about the cap in the future, so Trey Lance is going to be really cheap, like I discussed earlier. You really want that window with him in years 2 through 4. If you have to extend it into that 5th-year option, fine, right? But I think ideally, if you look at what the Kansas City Chiefs did after they brought in Patrick Mahomes, right? They sat him for a year, which I think he needed to. He was coming from a spread offense, but they sat him for a year. And then when they knew he was going to start the next season, they intentionally signed players to specific deals designed around the idea that Patrick Mahomes is going to be the highest paid quarterback in the NFL at some point. And that right now, them paying him as the number 10 overall pick was the biggest competitive advantage that they could create for themselves. So to me, if I'm the 49ers, Trey Lance is that competitive advantage. I just wonder if they're going to be able to really, really take advantage of it.
I know. I've been on board with the let's roll over the money, cut Jimmy, because I think Trey has just as good as an opportunity, even though he's a rookie, at winning games as Jimmy does.
I agree with that.
But from what I'm feeling, the vibe I'm getting, Ben, is that we're rolling with Jimmy. I genuinely think that's what's going to happen. As much as we've tried to kind of push the narrative, right? We've tried to kind of push John Lynch in the right direction. But I do feel like they're going to roll with Jimmy. And if he's winning games, then you continue to see more Jimmy.
Right.
But if we get off to a somewhat slow start or the season turns south midway through, then that's when, hey, it's Lance time. Get this kid the reps. I want to see him on the field. But that's ultimately what I think is going to happen. Now, what I will say is if Trey Lance absolutely wins this job in the preseason and training camp, then it's a still very viable option to move on from Jimmy, save the money, roll it over. Now we can load up next year.
That's what I'm talking about. And the thing is, too, is if they wait until the Sunday the Saturday before week 1, they can cut Jimmy with no financial penalty, pretty much zero financial penalty. So they have until that week 1 game to really make a decision on Jimmy Garoppolo if they want to wait it out. And to me, that kind of makes the most sense because I've wrote about this. I've talked about this before. I've discussed this before, but I don't think they can just give the job to Trey Lance, right? He has to go out and win the job from Jimmy Garoppolo, not just convincing the fan base, but he has to convince the team, the coaching staff, the front office that Trey Lance is not just the future. He's the present as well. And I think if the team is fully bought in, even if Trey Lance were to struggle somewhat on the field, how could anyone question that decision to move to Trey Lance if everybody else believes in him on the team? That's where I think you can really state the case for, if Trey Lance were to struggle. To me, if as long as he straight up wins the job from Jimmy and there's no question about who's better, not that it doesn't matter at all if they win or lose, but it matters a lot less if they were to just hand the job over to Trey Lance, right, with Andy Dalton as the starter. That's why I think looking back, I did want the team to maybe sign an Andy Dalton, not Joe Flacco exactly, but one of those types of guys, right? But then you get into what I was saying where you don't want to just give the rookie the job right away, just to give it to him, right? The 49ers aren't what the Bills were a few years ago with Josh Allen. They need to prove something this year. They really do. So they can't just go along with the idea that, throw the rookie in the fire, and if he stinks it up, fine, he'll work out at some point. That's not the position the 49ers are in right now. So I think just overall, and sorry if I'm ranting a little bit, Bay, they need to go about this the right way. And I feel like right now they are. I just hope they don't fumble the ball right at the end zone, right? Because they're getting so close to the beginning of the season. I hope they make the right decision. And yeah, Raymond brought this up. The team needs convincing to be able to move on from Jimmy. He was their leader. So, they can't just move on from him with no strings attached, right?
What I see this coming down to, Ben, whoever's going to win the games is who we got to play. Whoever gives us the best chance at winning games, that's how I see it. I want to win. So if they think that's Jimmy year 1, let me tell you something. It can't be with the amount of investment that we made into getting Trey Lance. It can't be year 2. So it's like Jimmy's. If they think for this one season, Jimmy maybe gives them a better chance at winning games, then roll with Jimmy. So because I want to win. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, and Korean 49er brought up something that we're going to talk about a little later, but to me, the only problem with saying that Trey's winning over some of the players is that you don't want to have the locker room split between two guys. You don't want an Alex Smith cap situation, right? Where half of the team is against the other half of the team because they want this guy to start, right? I think that's where things get dicey. And we'll talk about that later. And, we'll move on to the next topic now, but that is something dangerous we're dealing with here where you don't want to just, you want to make this a successful handoff. You don't want this to be an awkward situation where you have to deal with team dynamics and personalities. And that's where things you really muddy the waters and things get bad for me, at least. Bay, let's get to the next topic, though. I appreciate your patience with those first two. Anybody, if you got any questions for us, we'll try and answer them at the end or along the way. Just let me know in the comments. Bay, let's make this really quick. Let's talk about Melvin Ingram. He signed with I believe the Steelers, right, for a 1-year, $7 million deal. 49ers could have fit this type of deal underneath their cap. They could have made the situation work. Why didn't they sign Melvin Ingram, in your opinion?
Ben, I wanted him to. I can't even front.
I did too.
Melvin Ingram's a talented player. The guy had 0 sacks last year, but and he only played 7 games, so no sacks in 7 games. Maybe they saw something there where in the 7 games he didn't look good. I got to go back and check out why I can't even, because NFL Game Pass isn't even up right now.
It isn't.
But the 5 seasons before that, Ben, Melvin Ingram had 7+ sacks every year. So this guy was consistently getting to the QB. He was a phenomenal finesse rusher opposite Joey Bosa. And I thought he could have been a good fit in our scheme. So I really don't know why we didn't do it.
Yeah, to me, I don't really understand this one, actually. I feel like, I think it'd be one thing if the 49ers weren't interested in Ingram, but to me, why wouldn't they? I feel like he was a perfect scheme fit for what the 49ers are trying to do. He could be that opposite edge rusher for Bosa. And then guess what? If Nick Bosa does miss any time, if there's any sort of faltering along the way, guess what? You have a premium pass rusher you can go in and play right away. You don't have to worry about picking up another guy. I think part of this to me goes back to the idea that the 49ers already made a lot of offseason moves with the defensive line. So maybe they weren't necessarily looking to add another piece at that position. The 49ers do only have so much cap room left. Maybe they're waiting out and trying to see if there's a better fit available or something else like
maybe
that.
Maybe they know Arden Key is about to ball out. That's been my sleeper. So maybe they're expecting Arden Key to take that jump.
Yeah, well, and I think, it could be Arden Key, but maybe they have a few players in mind who they feel can fill those kinds of spots already. I think the one thing that'll get really interesting is if the team does cut or trade Jimmy before the season and they continue to pass on these types of players, that to me is when I would start questioning these types of decisions. Now, I understand it right now because the team only has so much cap space, but you're going to have $30 million to work with very soon if you do cut bait with Jimmy Garoppolo. So I think it would behoove them to go after these kinds of players, right? I've talked about the cap rollover before, but if we're going after these one-year rental type guys at these specific positions where the 49ers really could use some help, I'm not necessarily against that. I wonder if the 49ers are waiting for the right player to become available. Maybe they understand the position they're in right now. They know they could get a player in the future, a free agent, a trade piece, something like that. Maybe they have an idea of what they're going to do down the line. But to me, I did question this move a lot. And we won't spend too much time on this, but do you look at any of these free agents who are available right now? Do you think there's any of them that the 49ers should specifically be interested in?
I haven't, to be honest, I haven't checked it out in a while because I kind of feel like they're staying pat with what we got at this point. I know there's some corners out there. Steven Nelson, Poole, I believe, is still out there, but I think we're staying pat. I'm seeing in the comments Justin Houston. If they did want to get a pass rusher, Justin Houston's a guy. He played with D Ford in Kansas City, who's been productive for a long time in this league.
Yeah, I like Steven Nelson too. That's another name I've brought up before. Brian Poole is another name I would consider. I think I'm more interested in the cap rollover, but if the team does cut Jimmy, there's no reason they shouldn't pick up one of these younger guys, these guys who aren't quite over the hump yet, right? And maybe the idea is that you sign them to a one-year deal like a lot of players have this season, and you expect them to come back next offseason. To me, that's the type of move that would be really beneficial to the Niners. I just don't think it would be beneficial for the team to, go and sign Justin Houston for a year and then he's off the team. That's what I'm talking about. I don't know how much that's going to push the 49ers over the edge right now. I would really be interested in a player that, like I said, they could invest in not just this season, but in the next few seasons, and they'll hopefully be on the roster for not just 2021, but the future. I think that type of move would make more sense.
I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, and Raymond brought up maybe there's some surprise cuts. I think that's part of this too, is that the 49ers probably have a better lay of the land than, us who are just trying to be Twitter GMs and all that, right? And I think for them, they must have some sort of plan in place. And I'm sure they know what kind of options they would have no matter what. Josh Mangold was just asking how much cap do we have currently.
Great question.
We have $10 million in free cap space. It's technically 17, but that's not taking into account Trey Lance or Trey Sermon. So those two guys are going to take up a little bit of money. And I think the thing with Trey Lance's contract specifically, and most rookie quarterbacks in high first-round picks is that you don't usually give them a lot of money in that first season. Usually it's in years 2, 3, 4. So I don't think they'll be paying him all the money in the world in 2021. Hopefully, I think that's the thought. Bay, let's go to our next topic, and we're gonna get a little spicy here. And maybe I'm switching things up on you, Bay. Just let me know. Do you think George Kittle is the best tight end in the NFL right now?
This is a tough one. Because I can tell you he's top 2, right? I got him locked in the top 2. Now, what separates George Kittle and Travis Kelce is consistently on the field. Like, it feels like this. I don't know if he's missed a game ever. I don't know. He's always out there catching balls, whether it's Alex Smith, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce's making plays year in and year out. Now, what separates the two is what Kittle brings to the run game, because he's so physical as a blocker. Now, as a pure pass catcher, I would give the edge to Kelce. And I need to see more from Waller, but this guy Waller in Las Vegas, Waller's a baller.
Kyle Pitts is going to be something else too. I think we're really being spoiled with tight ends in the league right now. And I was just checking with Travis Kelce. By the way, Travis Kelce, not Kelce. He corrected someone on that. Apparently, everybody's saying Kelce wrong for the past few years, and he just hasn't bothered to correct anybody up until now, Bay. I know. You're looking at me like, what the, what? But apparently
this came out of his mouth.
This came out of his mouth. Go check this out. I'm sure that people can back me up in the comments. He is Travis Kelce, not Travis Kelce. Josh Mangold, yeah. But hey, Waller is a beast. What's good, Jay in the Bay? Shout out to Jay in the Bay. But I think to me, I think it's Kittle and Kelce right now, right? Kittle and Kelce. But I'll put it to you this way, Bay. Okay,
that's going to be hard for me to adjust to. That's a tough one.
It's a tough adjustment. And with the other Kelce brother, or Kelce, I'm doing it already. The other Kelce brother too, man. It's tough. You gotta keep track of these names. But no, I just wanted to say with this thing specifically, right? Kittle is the better blocking tight end. I think if we were drafting tight ends who were available and you were the 49ers GM and you could pick any tight end, right, and all tight ends were available, I would probably still pick Kittle, but I don't think that's because he's the better tight end. I think that's because he's the perfect system fit for what the 49ers are trying to do. But I'll say this, Bay, and maybe I'll get some pushback from you on this. Just let me know what you think. If I were starting a franchise blank right now, right, and I didn't have any players in place, I didn't have a specific scheme in place, I was just trying to build the best roster, I would go with Travis Kelce. I don't think I would go with George Kittle. And I think it's because of a few reasons. One reason you said specifically is that he stays a lot healthier. I just checked. Travis Kelce has only missed 2 games since his rookie season, his entire career. This guy just is a warrior. He does not miss games. And then to me, Bay, the difference, Travis Kelce scores touchdowns. George Kittle does not score many touchdowns. I would be okay with picking Kittle over Kelce, but like I said, if I were starting a franchise right now and I was the GM of that franchise and I would want to keep my job for as long as possible.
You have to take, in that account, you got to take age into consideration, right? Because Kelce has at least 3 or 4 years on George Kittle, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. He does, but I think the thing with him too is that, like we said, there's less injury concern. And if you look, Travis hasn't even played that many seasons in the NFL. He was just, what's funny, Bay, and this will startle some people. Let me know in the comments if you're startled, everyone. If you haven't heard this fact before, Rob Gronkowski and Travis Kelce are the same age. The same age. Now, the difference is that if you look, Travis Kelce has played a lot less football than Rob Gronkowski has, and he entered the league at a much later age than Rob Gronkowski did. He was about 24 years old or 23 before he even got to the NFL. So you're right in that he is older than Kittle, but also he hasn't really played a ton of football. And Josh Mangold just said, whoa, in the comments. It's a pretty startling thing to hear that Travis Kelce and Rob Gronkowski are the same age, right? Bay Area ballers, pretty nuts.
Yeah. You know what I will say? I feel like the threat of Tyreek Hill
Ooh,
also opened things up so much for Travis Kelce, as opposed. I mean, George Kittle. We'll see what Brandon Ayuk can do for him, but he's been the guy. He's been the weapon, right? Broke the receiving record for tight ends, which I think has been broken by Kelce. So it didn't last too long, but Tyreek Hill is so dynamic that I really feel like teams defend deep, right? Because you don't want to get beat over the top. So it really opens things up for Kelce to do what he does.
Yeah. No, I do agree with that. I guess I get back to that point, Bay, though, that if I were hired as an NFL GM and I had to pick one of these guys to start my franchise, I would have more pause with taking Kittle over Kelce, right, than I would with Kelce over Kittle. I think, to me, and just from this perspective, if I were the GM, right, and Kelce got injured towards the end of his career, he wasn't the same guy for the next few years. That would be more surprising than George Kittle getting hurt, right? But to me, you're relying on a known commodity with Travis Kelce, whereas with Kittle, it is more of a risk. 49ers fans do have to admit that.
You know where I'm at with that scenario? If we're talking like one season, this season coming up, a one season where I got to pick between the two, I would take Kelce. But if we were the GM picking a team for the long run, I think and I should know the age difference between the two, but the 3 or 4 years, it's so tight in terms of how talented these players are that the age difference, I got to roll with Kittle in that scenario because I'm expecting him to be a few years younger than Travis Kelce.
Yeah, so Travis Kelce is 31 years old. Kittle is about to turn 28. So there is a 3-year age difference between the two. Oof, God, this is just a really tough one, Bay. I think, like I said, if I were the 49ers, I wouldn't have an issue with picking Kittle over Kelce, right? He fits your system better, all that stuff. It's just that, gosh, in the end, I would hate being the GM who took Kittle over Kelce, right? And then Kittle doesn't stay healthy. That would really bite you in the butt down the line. And that's where I think if you were a GM, I would have it's really close. It is really, really close. I think everyone has to admit that. And just to go back to what you're saying, Bay, I think it does make sense that in 1 year, I would take Kittle, or I would take Kelce over Kittle, right? But I am going to disagree. I think on the long term, I would still take Kelce just because of the health concern. And quite frankly, the way George Kittle plays football, he puts himself at a much higher rate of getting injured than Travis Kelce does. The style of football that Travis Kelce plays with, he plays more fluid, plays more like
he's going to age like fine wine, like Jason Witten. Remember, Jason Witten played forever, retired, and then played again just because some of those tight ends, those pass-catching tight ends, they know where to be, how to defeat zone, find the holes in zone. They have the crafty, ability to beat man, even though they're a bit slower and long in the tooth. So I see where you're going.
Yeah, and listen, it's a tough argument either way. I don't think either GM is getting fired in this scenario for picking one or the other, right? But it is interesting to play these things out in our heads. Bay, I'm interested in this next topic a lot, and we might be talking about the guy we just talked about, but who do you think, and we'll do one on offense, we'll do one on defense. Who do you think are the X factors on the 49ers? And how about this? Let's start with offense for you. Who do you think is that offensive X factor for the team?
I mean, it's got to be the man that we've already been talking about, George Kittle. When he's not on the field, you just feel it. Something's missing. The impact that he has on the game as a pass catcher in the run game is phenomenal. He's an exciting player. The energy he brings to the rest of the team can't be replicated. It can't be duplicated. So the biggest X factor on offense, George Kittle.
I think George Kittle is the biggest X factor on offense. And you mentioned all the stuff he does great as a weapon, right? He can do all these things. He can even take jet sweeps. He can become an eligible runner. But the thing to me that sets Kittle over the edge is the X factor versus someone like Deebo Samuel, right, is that blocking ability. When you see the difference between the 49ers running game with and without George Kittle, it's immense. George Kittle graded out as one of the best pass blockers or blockers in general at the tight end position ever. He just is one of the best to ever do it at the position. So to me, if we're talking about X factors for the offense, we see what they're like when they're missing Kittle. Now, I think Deebo is a really good consideration for second place, but like I said, I think there are other people who aren't exactly Deebo Samuel, right, but who can do Deebo Samuel-like things and replicate some of the stuff. Now, I'm not saying you have a one guy that could replicate everything that Deebo Samuel does, but I think it's much easier to try and patch together what Deebo Samuel does rather than what George Kittle does, right? To me, that would be the difference between the two in terms of being an X factor, at least.
Yeah, I see where you're going there. I mean, yeah, we definitely want Deebo. Deebo is an X factor. And I like where Ekim's head's at because Alex Mack, he's a guy who's a bit long in the tooth. So, but if he can harness back to his days with Kyle Shanahan previously and just bring the stability to the center position, because really it's been a position that we've had a lot of injuries at, right? When we're talking Richburg and just the revolving door that was there last year, Brunskill did the best he could. I feel like he wasn't that prepared to be a center, but he did a commendable job. So Alex Mack, we're talking about, a Pro Bowler, right? So if he can lock down the center position where we know Kyle Shanahan asked the centers to do a lot to reach the second level on some of these stretch runs. So Alex Mack, huge X factor.
Yeah, and Korean 49ers right here in that you don't want that inconsistency from your offensive line. To me, the most important thing for the 49ers going forward in terms of their O-line is that they have every starter available, hopefully. I think Alex Mack, it is a worry in terms of his age right now, but considering all the options the 49ers had available, I think it was probably one of the better options they could have gone with. He makes a lot of sense in terms of anchoring that offensive line. And like everyone's talked about before, his experience with Kyle Shanahan is going to go very far for this team. And listen, even if Alex Mack doesn't really impact this team on the field, I think his impact as a leader in the locker room will show more than almost anything else. I really do believe that. But let's keep things rolling, Bay. For you, who do you think is that defensive X factor for the 49ers?
I mean, I'm taking the easy ones because when you ask me that instantly, it's Nick Bosa. Nick Bosa is so talented, but we missed that last year. He only played week 1, and that week 1 game, Ben, I've watched that multiple times because I also wanted to see Jimmy Garoppolo healthy for his lone start of 2020. So you get to see a healthy Nick Bosa, healthy Jimmy. So I've watched that one. Nick Bosa, I don't know if he got a sack, but he was all over Kyler Murray in that game. Yeah. And it just reminds you, like, this guy is so premierly talented. The array of pass rush moves that he has, outside rush, inside rush, bull rush, a hezzy. This guy's got all the clubs in his bag. So I just want to see him on the field. And he's a player that I get excited to watch. When the game's going down on Sunday, you can only watch so much on the live broadcast. But let me tell you, a lot of times my eyes, when Nick Bosa's on the field, gravitate to him to see what that guy's doing.
Ooh, and I see everybody in the comments bringing up some great names. I mean, really. And I just do want to touch on Nick Bosa really quick, Bay. He's not the guy I chose. And the reason I did not choose him is because we did see this team perform well without him last season. We've seen the 49ers be able to create some sort of pressure and figure out some way to patch up that pass rush without the presence of Nick Bosa. Now, is it worse? Yes, it's not going to be as good as it would be with Nick Bosa. But I think they've shown the ability to get by without Nick Bosa. And if we're talking about X factors, to me, how you define an X factor is if you took them away from the team, how poor would they perform? And if you put them on the team, how much would they elevate the team around them? So for me, I see everybody in the comments saying Jimmy Ward. That's a great name. I thought about him certainly. Jason Verrett, another good name that if he's there, if he's not there, it does change things immensely for the 49ers. But Bay, I got to go with the guy who, quite frankly, it's harder to tell whether or not he's an X factor. I'm going to go with Fred Warner because he hasn't missed any time in his career ever. So we don't know what this 49ers team looks like without Fred Warner. But if we're talking about taking away a player from the defense and how much they would be impacted by that moving forward, if the 49ers lost Fred Warner, things get really scary really quickly. Now, off-ball linebacker isn't as important as it used to be in the NFL, but with Fred Warner and the style of play he is in, with the 49ers wide 9 defense specifically, and how great he has shown his ability to be in coverage, to me, he is an X factor for the 49ers. Absolutely. I think, and like Josh is saying, it's just that if the 49ers were missing Fred Warner, I think the impact would be felt by it. And I'm sorry, Tommy, I'm not trying to jinx anything. I'm really not. But if we're talking about players being taken away from the 49ers and hey, I've talked about it before. I think if they lost Jason Verrett, it would almost be season over, right? But if we're talking about the season being like over, I think people would have the same reaction to a Fred Warner type of, not injury, call it whatever you want. Let's just say he doesn't play for the rest of the season for the 49ers. I think people would have a similar reaction to that as when Nick Bosa got hurt, which is season over. There's nothing they can do, right? Am I wrong to think that, Day?
I mean, no, you're not. No, you're not. Fred Warner is such a phenomenal player, and I mean, yeah, if something, I don't even want to think about that because I don't want to miss a snap. But in the preseason, we'll find out, can Azeez Al-Shaair step in if needed? Because we'll see him. I'm sure he's going to get some reps, at middle linebacker potentially. And Dre Greenlaw.
That's another one. Yeah.
I mean, can he step up if needed? Can he perform? We know he's not going to be Fred Warner. If Fred Warner's 100, can Dre Greenlaw be a 80? Can he get, can he get there?
Can he be somewhat of a patch up? Yeah. And I guess that's just the kind of thing where we don't quite know yet what impact. And we know the impact of Fred Warner, but we truly don't understand the full impact of what Fred Warner missing time would do to the team. And I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if we're talking about players and X factors and all that, I think Fred Warner, to me, I considered other guys. I wanted to talk about someone else. Listen, I gotta make YouTube clips about this whole stream afterwards. I don't want to talk about Fred Warner, but I think to me, he is truly an X factor for this team moving forward. Bay, we're going to jump around a little bit, though, with our topics. We got 3 left for everybody. We're going to do a draft at the end of this, so stay tuned for that. But first, let's talk about the NFC West, Bay. And I propose this to you. Who do you think is the toughest opponent right now for the 49ers in the NFC West?
This is really tough because the other 3 teams in this division are all good. They all are very talented football teams. The quarterbacks, all 3 quarterbacks are phenomenal. But I'm going to go with the Rams. And that's because I do think Stafford does bring a new element that Jared Goff doesn't, and it's kind of that grittiness. Stafford's got that grit to him where I'm looking around, and like I said, any one of these teams could potentially win this division. But I'm looking at the Rams with, Aaron Donald. Aaron Donald's, I mean, he's a phenomenal player. So right off the bat, I'm leaning Rams.
Mm-hmm. The only reason I wouldn't put the Rams on my list, Bay, is because they lost all their depth this offseason. I mean, really, that Cam Akers hit to me, that's going to impact the Rams hugely. Shout out to Cam Akers. You hate to see that kind of stuff in the NFL. These, people talk about fantasy and all that crap all the time, but these are young men who are just in the developmental stages of life. And to see someone go through anything like that, let alone it being tied so much to their career and to their worth and how much money they're going to be able to produce, you just hate to see anything like that. But I think the Rams are a very formidable opponent, but they're spending 25% of their cap on Matthew Stafford and Jared Goff right now. And they had to let go of guys like John Johnson and a lot of their other secondary pieces because of the money that they're paying Matthew Stafford and Jared Goff. So
yeah,
I struggle with just saying the Rams, even though I agree with a lot of your points that Matthew Stafford to me is a huge upgrade from Jared Goff. It's going to make a huge difference. But even within that, with their team, if they get one injury here or there to a key spot, I think the Rams are one injury away from maybe even, I don't want to say missing the playoffs, but very much underperforming from what people expect from them. Because right now they're considered one of the 3-4 best teams in the NFC, not just the NFC West. But the team I'm going to go with is, I think the Seahawks are actually the 49ers' toughest opponent right now. I don't really buy into the whole Cardinals situation this year, in that I think they added some better pieces this offseason. That roster is better than they were in the last few seasons, but Cliff Kingsbury is still by far the worst coach in this division. And like I said, with the Rams, they dealt with so much that it's just going to be tough for them to really, I think, make it through the whole season with all their pieces all together. I just wouldn't want to bet on that. So I'm going to bet on the Seahawks being able to do what they've done for the last, I don't even know how many seasons now with Russell Wilson, right? They've won 9 games every single season. They've been 500 throughout the entire time. And Eakim is right. Seattle has a suspect O-line, and injury could impact their offense. But with Russell Wilson, he is the X factor right now in the division to me. He is a huge X factor. And with Russell Wilson still doing what he's doing in Seattle, and them still having good enough personnel on defense, I don't see any way that they're not at least above 500, right?
You know what, Ben? You actually just convinced me. Can I flip flop? Because now I'm feeling like, shoot, you know what? The Seahawks, because it's like we've dominated the Rams. Why did I even pick the Rams? We beat them the last 4 times, right? Did we not? We've been dominating the Rams.
Well,
and the Seahawks.
To be fair, the Rams are a different team now, but you're right. The 49ers have dominated the Rams. Recently.
Yeah, I'm sitting here thinking, like, why the hell did I pick the Rams? We've been dominating them. And actually, Russell Wilson's had our number over his tenure. You know, they got the wide receivers. I think Tyler Lockett is a phenomenal player. A lot of people talk about DK Metcalf. Yes, he's a specimen.
But even Will Dissly, I like their tight end room. I mean, Seattle, to me, I think their weapons are – I don't love Will Dissly, but I think their weapons are underrated overall. I think people have discounted the weapons because of how great Russell Wilson is. I think the Seahawks roster is a little better than people give credit for. Not a lot, but just a little better than people give credit for. And like I said, I don't want to bet against Russell Wilson. I don't want to bet against Russell Wilson. Sorry. And Ryan brings up a great point, Bay, is that, listen, we're talking about who the toughest opponent is, but this is the hardest division in football. There's a reason it feels like every single team could make the playoffs. I mean, really. So no, this is pretty funny. A little bit of flip-flopper. It's okay, though. Well, listen, on my channel, you don't have to give a hot take and stick to your opinion. You're allowed to evolve, change, have a
it's so tight. It could be any one of these 3 teams.
It is.
And we got the toughest division in football.
Yeah, it is. It is. Bay, let's do our last topic before the draft we're going to finish with. And everybody, I'm just going to give you a preview of the draft we're going to do after this topic. We're going to draft the best non-quarterbacks on the 49ers with the idea of building a franchise, right? And potential franchise building blocks. So we'll do that after we do this last topic. We're each going to pick 3 players to start our own franchise with, and they have to be on the 49ers, and they cannot be a quarterback. So let me know what you guys think in the comments about that. I'm sure you'll have your own opinion. But Bay, first, let's talk about this. The 49ers right now have 2 quarterbacks who are significant in their locker room. How do you think this dynamic is going to play out with 2 quarterbacks? And do you think the 49ers can survive this change from one quarterback to another? And if not the change, having the 2 quarterbacks together this season?
Ben, these guys are going to be talking about it, right? These guys,
Yeah.
this is their job. They want to win games. They're going to talk amongst themselves on, hey, did you see the throw Trey Lance just made today? These are things that they discuss, all right? But what I will say is I think we have the locker room headed by Fred Warner, who just got extended, George Kittle. We have phenomenal people, right? They're great players, but they're also good people. And when your stars, right, take the lead and they're not divas or prima donnas about it, I think that sets the tone. So I don't expect having two quarterbacks to be an issue for these players.
I think I agree with you. I think the way the 49ers are set up now, I do not think it will be an issue. But let me propose this to you, Bay, and if I can put on my own, Grant cap. If the 49ers go into the season with Jimmy being the quote-unquote presumptive starter and Trey Lance is close to, if not better than him, the 49ers locker room could start turning against each other. I'm not saying this will happen. I don't think this is the likely scenario. But let's be real, Bay. There is a real situation where Trey Lance is proving to people in practice why he deserves to play, and that Jimmy Garoppolo is winning, and he's doing enough to stay in place. But part of the team knows that this kid that we're looking at, this kid we're watching, he's the future of this team. So do you think there's any issue the 49ers could run into where if they start Jimmy and it gets close with Trey, there's a lot of players saying to themselves, well, why aren't we starting the kid? I know Jimmy has proven all this to us. We've won with him before, but we've also never had another quarterback who was even close to this level who could come in and play. So how do you think that dynamic plays out if it is a situation where Jimmy Garoppolo is the starter and Trey Lance is looking good in practice and gosh, the team has to deal with potentially splitting the locker room between the two quarterbacks?
You know what they say, Ben, winning cures all. All right. So if they're winning games and Jimmy's winning games, I don't think there will be much pushback. If for some reason the season starts going south or we start off slow and for whatever reason they're still riding with Jimmy, then I could potentially see that's the scenario where I could see, maybe you getting out. It's where you hear unnamed players talk, right? Because when you're talking about that, you don't want to put a name on it. And I hate those reports, by the way, where it's like an unnamed player says the coach. But I'm not a fan of that type of reporting. But that's where I'm at with it, Ben.
No, and you know what? That's a fair opinion. I think the thing that will hold this team together, and if we're talking about the super positive side of this, is that, like you mentioned before, the 49ers have great leaders already in place in their locker room. I don't think there's going to be a question of where the leadership lies. I guess to me, the only concern I have is if the coaching staff starts muddying up, who is the starting quarterback and who isn't, and why they are and why they aren't, and who's getting the job and when. I think that's where things do get a little scary. But I think so far the 49ers have handled this the right way. So I don't think that will become much of an issue. Although it is something to note because it does happen with some teams and it does become an issue in some locker rooms. I think with the way the 49ers are set up now, I don't think it'll be too much of an issue for this team. But Bay, let's get into our last topic, and everybody, I'll explain this topic in full. You can give your opinion in the comments, but Bay and I are going to go back and forth. We're going to do a draft here to end this episode of Shanalytics. For everybody tuning in right now, thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for sticking with us. If you haven't already, go and subscribe to my channel, like this YouTube video so I know you guys are enjoying this. And guess what? Bay Area Baller stuff is in the description below, so make sure you go and subscribe to him too and follow him on Twitter right now. But Bay, let's talk about the topic we're going to do last. We're going to do a draft, a PFT style draft, right? I want to do the best building blocks for a potential franchise moving forward. If you were the GM of an expansion, let's say Mexico City or London sort of franchise, you had to pick your players, and we're excluding quarterbacks completely from this draft. Bay, I'm gonna give you the first overall pick in this draft, and then we're gonna go to you. We're gonna go back to me. We're gonna go to you, back to me, you, back to me. We're gonna take 3 picks total, or 6 total, 3 between each of us. So Bay, with your first overall pick in the hypothetical expansion Ben Meyerson inaugural draft, who are you taking from the 49ers?
Man, it's the Fred Warner show. I got to go Fred Warner.
Oh.
This guy, he's the captain of the defense. You know, we already talked about how consistently he stays on the field. And when I'm talking Fred Warner, he's a linebacker, but he's also a DB. That's what I've been saying. He's like 2 positions in one, because just the way he can drop back into zone coverage, his awareness to see who's coming across the middle, who's running a curl route, let me jump that, like he did on Tyreek Hill in the Super Bowl. So first pick, I'm going Fred Warner.
Ooh, I like that pick. I really do. And I think if we're talking about if we're talking about tiers of players, Bay, I think there's 3 guys I should probably consider right now. There are 3 guys who I've taken into consideration. One of them I'm going to eliminate because I think I'm going to get the other. I'm going to get one of them in the next round, right? God, I'm struggling between 2 right now, Bay. And oh gosh, you know what? I'm going to go for it. I'm going to take Nick Bosa. I think I'm taking Nick Bosa because I'm looking at the upside. If we're talking about the difference between Nick Bosa and some other players we're going to talk about in the future, the impact Nick Bosa can have on a game versus, let's say, an offensive player besides the quarterback, to me, defensive end, edge rusher is the biggest impact you can make out of any position besides the quarterback. And with Nick Bosa, the only thing I would have to worry about with this type of pick is injury concern right down the road. How is he going to fare? But with how young Nick Bosa is, with how much he did produce in his rookie season, with how much of a game wrecker he was, I think it's hard to not go for that high end upside with Nick Bosa. But I'll say, you know what? I wouldn't fault anybody for going a different direction with this one. But Bay, with Fred Warner and Nick Bosa off the board with the first 2 picks, who are you taking as your next building block for your franchise?
Man, there's 2 guys that I'm eyeing, and I'm like, man, guys. which one can maybe sneak past you and maybe get back to me in the 3rd round? But I'm going George Kittle. Because George Kittle, he's so exciting to watch. You know, we already talked about how dominant he is in the run game, phenomenal pass catcher. How about the yak? I mean, the first guy doesn't bring him down. This guy's got stiff arms, you know, the array of moves and the speed. Ben, we don't talk about George Kittle's speed enough. When this guy gets into the open –
you saw him outrun Derwin James in that Chargers game way back when, right? You saw him put on the gas pedal and just outrun every single defender. And you saw the kind of touchdowns that Kyle Shanahan created for him because he is so fast. And when you give him open space to be able to operate, he is just so lethal. He's one of the better players. He's one of the best players in the NFL. I mean, really. So I agree with you on that one. You know what? I got to go with the obvious one. Come on, Bay. What are we even talking about? I'm reading your mind right now. I'm taking Trent Williams. I'm not stupid. Come on. We're talking about some of those most important positions in football. I'm going to go and take the best left tackle in football and a guy who is a future Hall of Famer, walking gold jacket right now as it stands. So I think, listen, this is the last of the top tier guys on the 49ers roster who I'd consider taking. I think the 49ers have some high tier players, right? But maybe not at as important positions as left tackle and defensive end. So I'm happy with my team so far. I got Nick Bosa, I got Trent Williams, I got 2 of the most important positions in football figured out. So, Bay, what are you gonna go with next? And before you say your pick, I just want to say this: there's a guy I'm staring at on my list right now. I'm really hoping you don't pick him, but. Go ahead and make your pick.
Oh, man. You know what? This is a tough one. This is the part where it's like the 4 no-brainers are off the board, and I'm going with Jimmy Ward.
Oh, come on, man. Wow, okay.
I'm going with Jimmy Ward. The versatility, his ability to line up in the slot on a tight end or a wide receiver or match a running back coming out of the backfield. There's not too many safeties that can do what Jimmy Ward does. So if I'm a GM and I'm constructing a team, I mean, that's a guy, the versatility, I want Jimmy Ward.
Gosh, that's who I would have gone with 5th overall.
You know what? I forgot to mention his ability in the run game. He will hit you. And that's also maybe why he's had some injuries, broken his arm a couple times, because he's not afraid to stick his nose in there and make some tackles.
Absolutely. And that kind of leads me perfectly to my last pick. It makes it a lot easier. I mean, maybe not a lot easier, but it certainly makes it easy for me. And I got to go with my guy, Korean 49ers, talking about in the comments, Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk is more healthy than Deebo Samuel. If we're talking about the next player I would have been picking, let's talk about it. Outside of Ayuk, I think Deebo is the next guy you're really looking at on your board, right? Or am I wrong to think that?
Deebo, honestly, I really like it. It would be hard to pick Raheem Mostert over Deebo, but I absolutely love Raheem Mostert. And I think he's a guy
with a guy like him, you worry about that age, that injury history.
Yeah.
If you're a GM, I think from
and it's a running back. The running back is just a position that's kind of deteriorating, value wise in the NFL. But I just love Raheem Mostert.
Is an interesting pick to bring up. I think Jason Verrett, Jaquiski Tart. I mean, I think there's definitely some players you would consider taking on the 49ers, but to me, I think Brandon Ayuk is very clearly that last guy, or am I wrong to think that, Bay? Because
I got two other guys that really stand out, and that would be Eric Armstead. Eric Armstead and Javon Kinlaw. Kinlaw hasn't shown what I think he's going to show here in the upcoming season or two.
Another name we didn't bring up. I mean, listen, if we're talking about positional value, Juice is tough, but best at his position in the league. I mean, dude just is. So, I mean, if you're building the Baltimore Ravens, maybe makes sense to go after more of a Juice type, but I think if we're talking about Ayuk real quick versus some other players that you would be considering on the roster, I think the thing that sets Ayuk apart maybe from some other guys that we would be considering right now is that with Ayuk, he has the potential to be a top 10 player at his position. Really, he does. I think he's that kind of talent. And not just that, but you could really see him being the difference maker on a winning team in the future, making winning plays. Now, Ekim brings up a guy I thought we should consider, but like he points out in the comment with Jason Verrett, with his injury history, man, it's tough to be able to say, I'm a GM, I want to go have Jason Verrett on my roster. To me, that's a tough one. And for everyone wondering, that Ekim is Korean 49er, just so everybody knows. I know there's a little bit of confusion of that from time to time. But just any other, quick thoughts about the draft before we get out of this, any other players, I know we aren't giving Mitch Wishnowsky or Richie James Jr. a ton of love right now, but is there anyone else that you're considering?
I mean, Aaron Banks, I'm excited to see what he can do, and he's young, so he would be a good choice. And a player who I like, who I did a breakdown, Emmanuel Mosley, and I broke down him going up against DK Metcalf, right, in 2 or 3 games where they were matched up against each other, and I wanted to see what happened. How did Emmanuel Mosley do? And he got beat one time for a deep ball, but other than that, and he wasn't burned that badly on that play. But other than that, I thought he played DK Metcalf very well. I like Emmanuel Mosley. I think he's a solid CB2. So he's definitely someone I would consider.
Yeah, shout out Emmanuel Mosley. I think he's a very solid cornerback too. I think there's maybe some other guys I would consider, but within that, he's consistent. I think he had some consistency to him. You kind of know what you're getting from Emmanuel Mosley. So I definitely hear you on that one. And hey, if we're talking for everyone in the comments, I haven't addressed this so far. We got a poll going. who's going to be week 1 starter? Jimmy Garoppolo, Trey Lance. It's split 50-50 right now. I'm about to end it. So just be aware of that, everyone. I keep putting the Twitter polls out to see where the people are at. People are split 50-50 on Jimmy Garoppolo and Trey Lance.
I got to get my vote in.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you got to get your vote in. But real quick, Bay, why do you think people have a difference of opinion on this matter? Why do you think the fan base is so split right now with the Jimmy Garoppolo, Trey Lance decision? Because to me, it seems more obvious that Trey Lance is the future, right? And that Jimmy Garoppolo is the past. He will be the past at some point. It's just a matter of when. Why do you think the fan base has such a, I don't want to say visceral reaction, but there's a certain reaction when you try and tell people Trey Lance is the future of this team?
Because we're passionate, Ben. The 49ers, we got the most passionate fan base out there. So, we're knowledgeable. And really, I see both sides of the argument, of the Jimmy stands and the Trey Lance truthers. I can see both sides because an NFL offense, Kyle Shanahan's offense, is not easy to learn. And we talk about how smart Trey Lance is till we're blue in the face, but we really haven't seen him execute this offense yet. So until we do, I can't feel that confident, 100% like, hey, Lance is ready to roll. I haven't seen it. So,
and that's a super fair thing to point out. And I think, to me, listen, people who, I don't want to say people who are in the know, because that's not the right way to phrase it, but for people who live, breathe, eat the 49ers, who all they care about is Trey Lance, they know how good Trey Lance is potentially. They understand where the 49ers are coming from, why they picked him up, why he's on the team now. But if I can, Bay, I think there's part of this fan base that is still caught up with the idea that, hey, listen, the 49ers lost a ton of games when Jimmy Garoppolo wasn't the starter. The 49ers were considered one of the worst rosters, one of the worst organizations, one of the worst teams in all of football when Jimmy Garoppolo wasn't the starter recently. But in terms of what I have to say to that, and listen, I do understand that perspective. We've been through that recently. Trey Lance, the difference between him and Jimmy Garoppolo, for the people doubting Trey Lance, it's not that big of a difference right now. And especially when you consider the fact that if you look at what Kyle Shanahan did with Robert Griffin III in his rookie season, what him and his dad Mike did, they understood that he wasn't the most polished drop back passer. They understood that he was underdeveloped in that part of his game. So they took advantage of his athletic ability to the point where they broke the record for play action yards in a season with him, 1,800 passing yards off play action plays. So I think
a smart ass would tell you that they also broke his knee in the process.
They did break his knee in the process, but if we're going to be real, I think the style of running that Trey Lance will bring to the 49ers is not going to be as prone to injury as the Robert Griffin III. If you watch the way Robert Griffin III got injured, he was running down the sideline, making a quick play, right? More of a Lamar Jackson type runner versus a power runner. I think with Trey Lance, he's not going to be as prone to those knee shots and those. I mean, listen, you're a quarterback, you're going to be moving around. There's risk for that no matter what. But I think because of the zone read specifically, because I think that's how they're going to run the offense with Trey Lance. They're going to run a lot of zone read. I think the zone read will protect him a lot more than people actually give credit for. And I think with the potential of the rollout game, with the bootlegs, with all the movement outside of the pocket, with allowing Trey Lance to work with space and not making him run down the sideline like Jimmy Garoppolo got hurt, like Robert Griffin III got hurt. The 49ers play this the correct way. The potential for that Trey Lance offense, even with the injury concern, the potential, and I know this is obvious to everyone, is that Lance's ceiling is that much higher than Jimmy Garoppolo. And to me, if the passing ability is somewhat similar between Jimmy Garoppolo and Trey Lance, all the extra stuff that Trey Lance has to offer, I think that's what pushes this team over the edge. And to me, what should push the quarterback battle over the edge. Do you disagree with that at all, Bay?
Not at all. Not at all. Trey Lance is gonna be so exciting. He's gonna bring a new element to this offense, and I'm really hoping he takes off in training camp, in the preseason, and it's undeniable that, hey, Trey Lance needs to be on this field. That's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest hope from 49ers fans is that in the preseason that he's able to go out and prove his worth to this franchise, to this fan base, to the organization, to his teammates. And it becomes to the point where it would be in the best, it would be in the worst interest of the organization to continue to start Jimmy Garoppolo, because you have this guy there that is if not quite ready yet, he's very close to ready. And if he's very close to ready, Bay, with his athletic ability, with all the skill that he has, it becomes really tough to me to be able to say, no, we're going to sit Trey Lance. We're going to give him time to marinate, because part of the problem with that line of thinking is that you're paying Jimmy Garoppolo so much money, you can't afford to waste away all the time in the world with sitting Trey Lance on the bench. I think it actually becomes counterintuitive to a point where you're wasting away that rookie contract. I guess that's the worry I have with the whole Jimmy.
And to that point, you can't have a $27 million backup.
You cannot. Right? I mean, you can't. So yeah, I mean, you can't have a $27 million backup. We're gonna find out about all this stuff really soon. Thanks everybody for tuning in tonight. Bay Area Ballers, thank you so much for joining my channel. I appreciate it. You've come on my channel the most times out of any of my guests. I really appreciate that. Well, no, but seriously, everybody go check out Bay Area Ballers YouTube channel in the link below. I'm going to go end that poll now. Everyone, make sure you follow me on Twitter. Make sure you're subscribed on my YouTube channel. I appreciate all the support in the comments, everybody getting really active. I'll be back, not this week, early next week. Be on the lookout. I'll be on Grant's channel tomorrow. Hey, Josh, thank you. I appreciate the support as always, everybody. And hey, I look forward to the next time. Bay, you have any finishing thoughts for us? Anything you want to say?
I'm fired up. The 27th, we got less than a week. Training camp's kicking off, and I couldn't be more excited because I want to see what these guys look like on the field. And ultimately, the season's going to be here before you know it. So I'm excited. I know I'm going to be putting out some film-related content. So if you like watching the film, make sure you subscribe. Bay Area Baller 18 on YouTube and Twitter. Ben, thanks for having me. Anytime you hit me up, I get excited to work with you because you're the consummate pro. And, I mean, we click when we're on this show. So it's going well. Shanalytics, that's what's up.
Yeah, Shanalytics, that's what's up. Everybody, I promise, we'll try and make up that George Kittle film review. We weren't able to do it today because NFL took down Game Pass. Go complain to the league about that, everybody. Thanks again for stopping by. Appreciate all the time everyone gave me tonight. Have a great weekend, everybody. Thanks.